Change is inevitable. Many people have tried opposing it only to learn that lesson the hard way. You're consuming this content because a big change is about to happen in your life. This resource will guide you through it. Here are 15 rules of change. Welcome to Alux, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. Rule number 1, change with the environment or die off. It's not the strongest that survive, but those who are able to change the fastest. Times are changing and most are slow to adapt. Every change brings opportunity. Every new idea creates ripples of opportunity not seized by the previous generations who, over time, became stale. They lose their hunger and their ability to hunt. Before they know it, they starve off, making room for those who are able to navigate the new environment. Every day you get to make a choice. Are you going to find the opportunity in the new, or are you going to complain that things are no longer the same back when you found them to be comfortable? Rule number 2, changing your interpretation of the past is just as good as changing the past. Your only opportunity is to change the lens through which you view things. Because, look, all the shit that you've been through is what's contributed to the cocktail that you are now. The hardships and the struggles are there to make your TED Talk better. The dirt they threw at you will eventually turn into rich soil and you'll grow out of it. Changing the way you view your past happens to be the most effective way to make peace with it. It's not gonna make right the wrong things you did, but at least it opens up the future for you with an opportunity of a better tomorrow. Rule number 3, change might be hard now, but regret is hard forever. You know the saying, right? Change is hard, staying the same is hard, choose your hard. Well, this is basically the adult version of that because if you really break it apart, you realize you only have 2 real options in life. Rolling the dice of change and maybe through effort, discipline, and a little bit of luck you might win at this, or remain the same and lose by default. For some of you, the life you're living right now does not lead to the life that you wish to live. And as long as there's a gap between desire and reality, you're doomed to be unhappy, unfulfilled, and regretful. Looking back on that list, a smart person will realize you only really have one option left. Rule number 4, if you want different outputs, change the inputs. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, you know where we're going with this, right? If what you're throwing at the wall doesn't stick, maybe change what you're throwing. Learn from the things that fell off and adjust. If you're making progress, keep at it. If you want faster progress, either do more of what you're doing or get smarter about it. Once you realize change is actually a permanent ingredient of the road forward, you'll stop thinking about it as something you only have to do when things flatline. The scale of what you're changing may differ, but the change is permanently present. Rule number 5, you don't get to complain about changes you haven't made. Some of you are broke because you're lazy. Some of you are overweight because you don't exercise and eat garbage all the time. Some of you are not in a relationship because you haven't taken the time to develop a personality. You don't get to complain about your house being dirty if you don't clean up after yourself. These words only trigger those who deep down know they've been hiding behind a self-knit layer of lies. Everyone's at fault for what's happening to you because of you, except you. One day you'll realize that nobody is coming to save you. The person you're waiting to show up and change your life? My friend, that person is you. But before you try to cancel us, know that this is actually a massive opportunity for you and you alone. You're actually in a much better position than most people because for you, there's a linear path to changing your life for the better. You know what you want to achieve, and even more amazing is that no other party needs to get involved. All of these are single-player quests. Just find enough motivation to start and watch yourself make yourself better. A person can literally reinvent themselves in under 6 months. From who they are, to what they do, to where they live, to how people see them. And we know this to be true because we've actually documented and broken down the exact process to do it. That framework is called Reinvent Mastery, and there's only 24 hours left to go get it by going to Alux.com/reinvent. For every single time you say you'll do it when the time is right, know that that time is now. For every single time you said you don't know where to start, well, now you have a step-by-step framework. For every time you told yourself you're this special snowflake and that for whatever reason it might not apply to you, although hundreds of other people just like you have already enrolled, know that it comes with a 6-month guarantee where if your life doesn't get measurably better because of this course, or it doesn't at least pay for itself, we'll give you all your money back, no questions asked. We close the doors in 24 hours because we'll be busy working with those who don't leave their future up to chance. So go to Alux.com/reinvent right now. Use the promo code NEWME at checkout for $100 off. Rule number 6. The fastest progress comes from changing what you do with what you already have. Stop using the excuse of not having what you need to start. Instead, start with what you have. Any fool can make money if they have money. The real magic is making money when you don't really have any. This one skill causes the most powerful shift between the haves and the have-nots, because some of the have-nots figure out how to make something instead of receiving. Once you become a creator, you can always create and trade your creation for money, food, shelter, knowledge, tools, etc. Rule number 7, change is actually an exchange. You give something up to get something else. Reframing it this way sheds light on what actually happens when you actually make a change. Here's the formula for change. Something exists but doesn't live up to expectations. You choose to get rid of the present and replace it with something else. Everything in life follows this formula. From simple things like changing your job, your car, your clothes, to your employees and even your inner circle and yourself. Now, let's just say you've got an alcoholic friend that drains you of energy every time you hang out with them. What are the variables? The person, the alcohol, and your choice to spend time with them. You can change the friend. You can change the environment that you meet up in so there's no alcohol present. Or you could decide to no longer be a part of those interactions. And in a similar vein, be careful when choosing a life partner because they have to match your pace of change. The most frequent complaint that a couples therapist will hear from one side is that the other side has changed, that they're not the same person that they were in the beginning of the relationship. But if you've been paying attention, you know that change is an ongoing process. Couples don't break apart because one person changes, no, but because the other one chooses to remain the same. That's why they drift apart. If this just made a lot of sense to you, hit the like button because it helps out the channel. Rule number 8. Trust is the first stepping stone toward change. You cannot change based on advice you don't trust. You might receive the same advice from multiple people, but only take it seriously when it comes from a person you truly trust. But there's a catch to this, and this is what traps most people. The people you trust the most are usually those in your inner circle. The problem with taking advice from them is that their interest lies in protecting you, so they're always going to provide advice that shields you from possible pain or struggle. Anyone who's ever done anything notable knows that rewards lie on the other side of pain and struggle. Your inner circle can only provide you with advice that prioritizes the short term versus the long term because they don't really know what you're capable of. Rule number 9, unless new information comes into light, never change the goal, change the approach instead. It's not the plan that's your problem, it's actually a pretty decent plan. It's failing to stick to it that's keeping you from making progress. Yet most people, when they look at this situation, hurry to change the plan to something else because making a new plan is easier than actually doing the work, right? This rule works both in your personal life and in your professional life. When you zoom in, things might look chaotic, but if you zoom out, you realize you're steadily trending upward. For example, this is the American stock market in the last 6 months. Ups and downs, fluctuations very similar to how you feel and experience life on a day-to-day basis. And this is what it looks like when you zoom out and see it from a macro perspective. If the fundamentals haven't changed and you're still aligned for the long term, zoom out and get back to work. You're actually doing better than you realize. Rule number 10, personal change is more emotional than it is rational. Your brain already knows the answers to almost all the problems you have in your life. You're good from a rational perspective. You know the theory plenty. But when it comes down to making something happen, you don't know how or what to do. Everyone knows how to get a six-pack. You walk into a 7-Eleven and... Kidding, okay, you simply don't eat junk food all the time and you do various core exercises. And repeat that until your desired outcome is achieved. Rationally, everyone's great. Well, almost everyone. Think about it. How many times have you been speaking with an overweight person telling you about a new diet they're on and how the science works behind it? Every time you meet them. Yet you meet them 6 months down the line and they look exactly the same. They're still overweight, or in other cases, maybe they're still broke, they're still single, they're still in debt, they're still in that soul-sucking job, they're still some kind of miserable. It takes years of continuous pursuit to understand that change is emotionally first and rationally second. Your body prioritizes eating cake and drinking beer because these feel better now than the pain and success will feel later. That's why Carpe Diem and YOLO are a part of culture. Although, I don't think anybody actually says YOLO anymore, do they? The way change gets implemented emotionally is by slowly building momentum. You get yourself the smallest win possible and then you go for the next one. Although the mathematicians will tell you to pay the highest interest loan first, the way you actually get out of debt is by paying off the lowest amount of debt you currently have. Because once you do, you'll get a feeling of achievement. You'll see you're actually able to pay off your debt. Once you win emotionally, the rationale part starts becoming more viable. This is why Reinvent Mastery is actually able to achieve the results we're shooting for, because we go about the goal of reinvention, of changing your job, your country, your friends, from an emotionally effective perspective, which, by the way, nobody else is doing. So if you want to give it a real shot at trying something different, go to Alux.com/reinvent right now and use the promo code NEWME before the next 24 hours runs out. We'll see you on the inside. Rule number 11, changing everything is mostly a net negative. You know, we always hated the expression, throw the baby out with the bathwater, because how stupid can you be to throw out a baby? When you disregard something in its entirety, you lose more value than you realize, and it leaves a vacuum that you don't know how to feel. A great example is what our generation has done with religion. We decided almost in unison that a man in the clouds is a bullshit story, so we turned our backs on it. Now you're alone, no sense of purpose, no sense of community, living with anxiety, existential dread, nihilism, and a perpetual feeling of insignificance. Glad that worked out for ya. Young people do the same with traditions, only to eventually grow old and realize just how much good they did for society. Sure, change with the times, go for it. But do so by building new, better traditions, not by removing traditions altogether. Rule number 12. If you want people to really hear you, change the way you speak to them. Take a step back and ask yourself, is your goal to say the thing you want to say, or is it for them to understand what you need from them? Your words, your tone, who speaks the words, and what the intent is all makes the difference. People want to hear what they want to hear. That's why they say stuff like, my truth, because their worldview is fixed. And unless you're able to navigate that maze, you'll always be looked at as an outsider who doesn't know what they're talking about. Once you're able to do that, do so repeatedly and from different perspectives. Building companies, we've learned firsthand that an employee needs to hear something at least 5 times before they comprehend its importance to the company. Rule number 13, be the change you want to see in the world. Gandhi, the OG, made the list because you're not being the change you want to see in the world, and it shows. Everyone wants things to change, but nobody wants to change themselves. Ideally, everyone else would change and implement change that you would benefit from, right? You'd be more than happy to show support for that. But that's not how the world works. You'll never be able to help anybody else if you cannot help yourself first. For as long as you live, remember this quote, okay? A sinking ship can save no one. You want to make your parents proud? Start with yourself. Want to contribute to humanity? Start with yourself. Make yourself sustainably rich and then use that wealth to help others. Rule number 14, changing your logo doesn't change what your company does. The same way changing clothes doesn't change you as a person. Small changes for a limited time aren't enough to lead to long-term effects. They're a start, sure, but they do not excuse future work. Just because you didn't cheat on your partner this weekend doesn't mean you have a happy marriage, yet some people do think like that. Like a puzzle, you pick up each piece and figure out its place in order to build the life you want. Like a puzzle master, you look at the box to see what the final picture is supposed to look like, and then you proceed to find the structural pieces. For the end result to work, it's a holistic approach. If all you're holding is one piece from a 1,000-piece puzzle, you quickly realize it is not enough. And lastly, rule number 15, people will not change unless change is the only option left. People will try to avoid change as much as possible. They'll make up scenarios and justify extreme levels of pain and misery just so they don't have to change. Why? Because the pain they feel is familiar and they're more scared of the devil they don't know than the devil they do. Rationally, you know that it's a dumb thing to do, but as we've established, humans are emotion-first creatures. The same way that most beasts would avoid a conflict until they get concerned and then things take a switch. The change happens. It requires a sense of urgency. Change requires something to be at stake. And what's at stake has to be so big that saying no is impossible. That's why if a doctor told you to lose 30 pounds in the next 3 months or you'll die, you'd figure out a way to do it because your desire to live is greater than the pain required to generate that kind of change. Most of you wait until the absolute last minute to implement change, only to realize sometimes that it's too late. For those of you who've done it successfully, what's the change that you are most proud of? Leave your answer in the comments so it inspires everyone else. And since you're still around, we saved a little bonus just for you. Location is the most important thing to change until location becomes unimportant. As a true Alexer, you know that location is the most important decision you'll have to make in your life because everything else that will unfold in your life stems from that. But there's more to this story than meets the eye. Change location and grow strong. Then acquire the ability to grow strong in any location. As you continue to change, you become incredibly good at changing. Your mind and body adapt to every new environment you throw at it, and you become a universal being that can thrive in any location. That is when you win. When everywhere you go, you feel at home. You're at home wherever your feet are. When you're in your space with your family and a few essentials, and you no longer feel like you need anything. You grow to realize that anything you want can be acquired anywhere you go. So your happiness, your fulfillment, it's no longer tied to a pursuit. That hole that some of you feel inside right now is no longer there. You can have anything you want, but not everything all at once. The kid in you smiles when you realize you've arrived at this life you want. All of this is attainable. If you believe you can get there, we know our premium content can help you get there faster, especially Reinvent Mastery. So do your future self a favor, okay? Go to Alux.com/reinvent, and before you pay, use the secret promo code, My Time Is Now. We saved it just for the real ones who stick with us until the very end of our videos. It'll give you a $150 discount as our way of saying thank you for being here today. And just a heads up, we're probably not going to reopen the doors to Reinvent Mastery for the next 6 to 12 months. So if you miss out, you might not get in for another year. And to keep at least one tradition alive, write the word tradition in the comments. Let's freak out some of those new viewers who have no idea what's happening.